You know, culture isn't just HR fluff. It's the engine behind revenue, talent retention, and business freedom. Now, in this episode, we're going to unpack how the right team rituals, values, and environment let businesses scale big without the burnout.
Welcome to Fortify Live with your host, Ford Saeks.
Joining us today is Josh Cunningham. He's the founder and CEO of Rockerbox, the premium inside sales assistant service that's built for real estate agents that are drowning in leads and starving for real follow-up. Now, since launching in 2013 from his basement, Josh and his team have worked with over 3 million internet leads and helped train and manage over 400 inside sales agents. And he's built a culture strong enough to fuel growth and always keep their promise, which is service, systems, cultures, and results. Josh, welcome to Fortify Live.
Hey, thanks so much, Ford. I'm very excited and proud to be here. Appreciate the opportunity.
Now, full disclosure for everybody, Josh and I are in EO, and we're in an EO forum together. And anytime there's an issue with any of our forum members having to related to hiring, retaining, engaging, leading teams, whether that's through culture, leadership, management, team building, communication change, Josh always has these really great insights. So I said, you know what? I do this show every week on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. We're live right now on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube and a few other places. And I said, Josh, I've got franchise owners, franchise brands, private equity groups, entrepreneurs, manufacturing. I've got all kinds of entrepreneurs. And whenever I talk to a group, they always tell me one of their biggest challenges is finding, attracting, engaging, and leading teams, which of course the foundation is culture. So Josh, tell our listeners today a little bit about, what is Rockerbox, and then how did you get this skill set to be able to help people with not only inside sales leads and assistants, but understanding culture at the level that you do?
Yeah, I appreciate the intro. And just to kind of add to that, the nice thing about being in an EO forum together is, that we're only allowed to share from experience. We can't just shoot all over the room, right? Can't share this hypothetical information that's never been put into practice. So that's always where my experience comes from is, 12 years now, Rockerbox has been alive and cranking away. I started the business back in 2013, like you'd mentioned. I was working with some real estate agents that were drowning in leads. They needed some help with follow-up. And so what I decided to do was, I'm based in College Station, Texas, which is home to Texas A&M University. And what I decided to do was hire a bunch of sharp, enthusiastic college students to make these phone calls that realtors didn't want to make. The only other alternative at the time was just to hire a VA overseas that English is their second language and they don't really understand the culture. And so I thought, what this industry needs is a permanent turnkey solution. And I can find that right here in College Station. There's about 75,000 students that attend the university. So we're able to select the best and the brightest from that talent pool to basically hop on the phones and make phone calls all day. And that's kind of how the journey was in the first 3-4 years of business. Was just like any good entrepreneur, you find a problem, you figure out how to solve it, and you profitably deliver it to your customers. And about 3-4 years into the venture, I'd kind of removed myself from the day-to-day operations, and I started to kind of ask myself and reflect why, what gets me out of bed every day, right?
Right.
I mean, we created this profitable business, we're helping people solve problems, but what actually gets me out of bed every day? And, I actually reread Traction, several times in my career, but there was something that really stood out to me that time that I read it. They say, content is the same, but it's context that is key. And it was just talking about the different types of organizations that exist. Some are fueled by passion. Some are, fueled by solving a problem, and some of them are purpose driven. And that's when I kind of realized that, yeah, we're jumping on the phones every day and calling cold buyer leads and seller leads and handing them off to our client. But really, the purpose of our organization is to move people forward. And so once I kind of came to that grounding moment of realizing, like, yeah, we happen to make phone calls, we happen to work with real estate professionals, but ultimately what our business does from a higher level is we move people forward, right? We take the cold leads, we move them forward through the sales pipeline. That's pretty obvious. But the work that we do for the teams that hire us, it moves their lives and their careers forward as well. So they have leverage in their business. They have freedom. They can focus on other higher income producing activities other than calling a cold lead that registered on their website. And so I could see the transformation happening with some of our clients. In fact, our first client ever, her name's Spring Benson. You should Google her, but I knew her 12 years ago, and it was just her and an assistant and a buyer's agent. She's now one of the largest real estate teams in the entire country. And so this gave her that freedom, that leverage to go on and scale and grow their ancillary businesses and build her team. But then the thing that stood out the most to me was every day in our office. We have these sharp and enthusiastic Texas A&M students where the part-time job market in this town is, do you want to go sell beers at the local
Right.
bar or do you want to sell shoes at the mall? There's really no real skill building and career building opportunities for people. And so I thought, well, I'm going to hire these people because they're going to be great on the phones. But after seeing the impact that this work made on their lives, they started walking the stage with multiple job offers. They started making more than their peers. They started skipping entry level positions and moving right up into management within a couple of months because of the experiences and the skills that they built here. And so that I'm getting goosebumps talking about it right now, but that's really what gives me the warm fuzzies to go, yeah, this is what this is all about. We just so happen to call internet leads. We just so happen to be in real estate, but really this organization has a purpose to move people forward. And so that's our sort of North Star. And then within that, we also have our core values, which guide all of our decisions and the actions that we make here at Rockerbox. So that was back in the year 2017. I had exited myself from the day-to-day operations. I thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool to live in San Diego? So I packed up my life and moved out to downtown San Diego and enjoyed perfect weather for about 5 years of my life. Yeah, right. And just managed the business from a couple Zoom meetings a week. And the operations stayed here in Texas. And the reason why that was able to fuel so much freedom in my life was the culture that we had built, the foundation that we had laid before I moved to San Diego, before I started working virtually and just tuning into Zoom meetings every couple days. And so that's when it kind of kickstarted another passion of mine, which was, hey, I'm a part of a lot of entrepreneurial groups, real
Right.
estate and other diverse industries. And I hear time and time again these struggles that business owners and business leaders have because they're not attracting the right talent. They're putting up with drama on a daily basis. They tell people what to do, and they get shocked. Whenever the expectations don't get delivered, and they have to control everything on their own, right? Everything bottlenecks through them. Every decision goes through them. And I'm sitting here thinking something that was really easy and simple to me, it was my passion, which is company culture. I see a lot of other people need help with, and so that inspired me to write my book. It's called "Culture is the Key: How to Unlock Massive Profits and Freedom." You can grab a copy on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. But this is chock full of all of our golden nuggets, which are just the little things that we've applied into our business day in and day out to really move the ball forward. And then I also did over 20 different interviews with business owners and entrepreneurs from a wide diverse of industries to get their insights as well. How are they attracting and retaining, not just attracting, but retaining? That's incredibly important, the top quality talent. How are they delivering exceptional customer experiences, which drives referral and repeat business? And then as that business owner, we get into business for freedom, right? Nobody signs
Right.
up for a 160-hour a week, work week, and every decision has to be made by them, and they're constantly pulling their hair out because they got to manage all these different, herding cats and all these moving parts. You get an entrepreneurship for freedom, and so this allows people to truly find that freedom in their life as a business owner, to where they can step back, live wherever they want, work from wherever they want. In fact, in 2021, when the whole world shut down and there was nothing fun to do, I bought a 35-foot motorhome and traveled the country with my 1-year-old daughter and my wife. And I would have been able to do that if I didn't have that foundation laid down to deliver exceptional customer experiences and attract and retain top quality employees, and then provide that freedom in my life as well. So it's something I'm incredibly passionate about. I've worked with a lot of small businesses, large businesses, entrepreneurs, anybody who really knows that they identify with that issue of, I'm always hiring. I can never seem to hold on to good people. That stuff falls through the cracks, and I'm a little embarrassed to face my customers because I'm not sure what they're going to say. All those types of problems are what I hear time and time again, and that's what having what I call a 5-star company culture will help solve.
Yeah, so I know that you've talked a lot, and it's in your book too, about the role of daily rituals and huddles that they play in your business. I know that, I've read leadership books, and you try the huddles, but it's not the tactic, it's how it's executed, right? It's getting
hmm
everybody to buy in. So what role does that really play for an organization who's listening to this? And I was working with a construction company on their marketing automation, and I just happened to ask them a little bit about their team, and they said they hired 121 people in the last 12 months, and they lost 100 people in the last, they have a
Wow.
revolving door. So, and I asked him, I said, well, what's the average income or the salary? And he said, well, we have two. We have the construction workers that make anywhere from $20 to $30 an hour. Then we have the leaders that are at 100 grand a year, excuse me. And
hmm
so, it's enormous expense to not keep and train your people. So how do those rituals really play out in an organization, and what should someone who doesn't have those, where should they start, other than of course getting your book?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up because the huddle was actually rolled out at Rockerbox for that exact reason. Um, One of our first summers of growth was back in 2015. People were signing up right and left. We were just hiring as fast as we possibly could to keep up with demand. And we built a pretty good team that summer. Well, we're here in College Station, Aggie Land, and something happens every single year in September here in Aggie Land. And we were caught by surprise that year. The school semester began. And immediately when that happened, we had probably about 40% of our team just turn over because they were like, hey, cool summer job. I really learned a lot, really enjoyed the competitive work environment. But my classes are starting back up. Football season's starting back up, which of course in Texas is a religion. And my extracurricular activities are warming back up. So I'm just gonna call it quits and say, hey, that was a fun ride. And that's when I was just absolutely devastated. I was like, how are they not seeing this? How are they not seeing that this is the first step of their young professional career, and they should be in here giving it their all and building their resume and building their experiences and working their way up the org chart and finding new leadership positions, new leadership skills that they'll be able to apply when they graduate. And so I took a long, hard look in the mirror and I realized, well, that's where the problem is, right? As an entrepreneur and business leader, you always have to be willing to accept the fate and the responsibility that everything is your fault. And so I thought, well, what I really am not doing is I'm really not articulating that vision that I just had, right? That this is this first step of your own professional career. And so I thought, well, how can I do that? And not just one time, not just sending out an email or talking to people in the new employee orientation or putting in our job posting, but how can I do that ritualistically every single day to show people this is important, this matters, what you do is making a positive impact on people's lives, and this work and this skill and this craft is going to take you and move you to new heights in your career. And that's when we implemented our daily huddle, because we basically had, we're in the office 12 hours a day, so we have 3 shifts coming in, 3 4-hour shifts. We got an AM, a mid, and a PM, and everybody was just kind of walking in the door, putting on a headset and smiling and dialing, and then they'd clock out and they'd leave. And if you think about it, our callers are part-time. There's 168 hours in everybody's week, right? We all have the same 168 hours. And I was borrowing about 16 of their hours, right? They'd work like 4 or 5 shifts a week. So I'm literally only asking for 10% of their life. But the thing is, the other 90% is filled with all sorts of stuff, right? We have parents and we have siblings and we have kids and we have relationships, and of course these students they're dating each other and running around the bar district together, and they're stressed out about classes and they're worried about what the football team is going to do this week. And so there's all this other stuff that we have going on in our lives. No matter what age we're in, we've got stuff going on. And so I thought, well, what better way to bring everybody in and start each shift on the right foot? And so that's how we do each shift. We bring everybody in. Our huddle is a very simple 4-step formula. The first is recognition. So there's a lot of different ways that I'm sure you could think of recognizing people in your organization. We start with core values. So we say, oh, hey, I want to give a shout out to so-and-so for, possessing the mindset of a champion. And they did that this way on the last shift that we worked together. And so we literally have like a huddle board up on our wall with an org chart, and everybody has little baseball cards. And in fact, I got one right here. Everybody has these little baseball cards with with their name and their hometown and their employee number, and then we have these magnets, these 5 different colored magnets that all are associated with a different core value. So people put magnets up by their names. Oh, I want to recognize so and so for living by this value. I want to recognize so and so for demonstrating this value. So that's the first step, is recognition, and we start with core values. We also recognize our numbers, right? Every business has a number,
right?
Whether it's sales or customer service or whatever, there's always some way to measure your day. And so we go over those numbers. And then the next thing is education. So as any growing business is moving and shaking and changing day in and day out, there's always going to be some updates or some new information or some things rolling down from leadership that everybody needs to be aware of. And then we also, as part of our education, practice different parts of our script and our objection handlers. So we're actually practicing and educating and growing and becoming a better version of ourselves. And then the third is a connection card. So I literally bought like a deck of conversation starters, like, dinner conversation starters off of Amazon. And we pull one out of the deck and we say, hey, what superhero did you want to be when you grow up?
Right.
Or, what if you had money was no issue, what trip would you go on? Or just some sort of thought-provoking question that's fun. And of course, that's one of our core values is we have fun while being the best. So that very much aligns with that. Like, hey, let's just take a couple minutes and chat about ourselves and dream up something big or reflect on something that happened to us. And so it's kind of forced water cooler talk. So
Right.
it creates those connections with everybody, asking questions that you probably would have never asked. And then the last thing is motivation. So we all came in here, we put all the madness, all the stress, all the stuff outside. We left it outside the door. When we walked in the door, we clocked in, we jumped in the huddle. Now we're all on the same team. Now we're all putting our best foot forward. Now we're all rowing in the same direction. What do we want to accomplish? What goals can we hold each other accountable for the next 4 hours? And so everybody states their own goal. I want to identify this many opportunities, or I want to get this many live transfers, or whatever it might be. And we write it down on a wipe and write board. And so everybody sees their goals publicly displayed. And just that one little ritual right there has been game changing for us because it drastically reduced our turnover. Because one of the phrases I want to be famous for one day is it's only as big of a deal as you make it. And so a lot of times in business, when people are, you know, panicking about something, it's like, well, I mean, how big of a deal is that? Oh, it's a really big deal. Do your people know that it's a big deal? Because if you're not making it a big deal, then it's not a big deal. Or sometimes we freak out about something that we shouldn't be freaking out about, right? And it's like, hey, is that really that big of a deal? Maybe we should like let the foot off the gas pedal a little bit. So what this huddle does, is it makes it a big deal, right? Everybody shows up to work and we all agree that we're here together. We have one aligned vision, one target, and we're in this together and we make it a big deal. And so we start each of our shifts that way. And it's been absolutely exceptional for turnover. Now we hire students, we keep them around for years before they graduate. And we do quarterly surveys to get feedback. We do monthly one-on-ones to get feedback. And time and time and time again, people tell us the huddle is one of the favorite rituals that they get to be a part of every single day because it allows them to kind of check out of all the other stuff that's going on in life and really focus on the task at hand.
And what do you do when you have a staff member or maybe even a leader? You know, when I go into organizations, there's always those people that are a little bit closed-minded. They've been doing the job for a long time. They're a little stale in the role, but they possess so much brain trust that the leadership doesn't really want to replace them. And so what do you do when you're working with an organization or if someone's listening and they have people on their team that maybe aren't getting with the program? You know, everybody else, there's an old saying that says it's easier to run with 1,000 people in the same direction than one person tied behind your ankle. You know, one bad apple can ruin the whole bunch. I always talk about only quality people. You know, hire quality people. You know, hire for attitude, train for skills. Create an environment, a culture that holds people accountable. So what do you do, or what do you suggest to a CEO or an executive listening to this today that might be struggling with someone on their team that they need to, get with the program? And I always say train to standard or free them up for new opportunities. But that's, that's not always what people want to hear. But what would you do?
Yeah, couple thoughts there, and I see this all the time as well. I mean, most businesses that you approach, and I talk to them about culture. They're like, yeah, that'd be nice to have if everything was running smoothly, but we got stuff to worry about. We got results to deliver, and that's what most business leaders and entrepreneurs are always focused on is results, right? But we have to become a student of our results by backtracking where they came from, right? Our results. So, like in this case, you got this guy on the team, and he has all this brain trust, or he's the top sales guy, or whatever. We've heard it all, right? What we're willing to tolerate with this bad behavior. Well, the results come from their actions, right?
Right.
Their actions come from really their psychological and emotional state. Like, how are they feeling at that time? If you've ever had a good day, everything seems to be running smoothly. If you ever had a bad day, the littlest thing can bother you. And so the results come from the actions. The actions come from essentially their mood, right? Their attitude, their energy. But where that comes from is the internal dialogue that we have on a day in and day out basis. And that is focused from what our belief system comes from, right? What we're giving our attention to. So anytime I have this difficult conversation with a business leader, the question isn't, we can't just ignore the fact that, their belief system is not aligned with everybody else on the team just because they're getting us results. Because ultimately what you have to instill, that's why I say culture is the key, it's the foundation. Because if you can get your entire tribe to believe what you believe, then that's how you can move to San Diego and manage the business from Zoom. That's how you can travel the country in an RV for 4 months. is because you have a group of people that believe in what you believe in, which then drives attention to the right thoughts, which drives attention to the right actions, which then gets you the best results. So it is typically, kind of a little bit of a ruffling of the feathers anytime someone is
Right.
excited about, hey, let's do this the right way. Okay, we've been doing this the wrong way for a long time. Let's do this the right way. Well, what about Gary over here? Old grumpy Gary, who's like got the worst
Hypothetically, Gary.
attitude.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got the
Or
worst attitude.
did you say Randy or did you say Gary? Oh yeah.
Randy, yep. And it's like what about him? Are we just going to allow him to do what he does? Absolutely not, because ultimately every company has a culture, right? And most of
Right.
it comes from just what you're willing to tolerate. So maybe bad attitude Gary over here, like you said, let's free up his future so he can find a tribe that aligns with his culture, right? We all come from different backgrounds, different experiences. And so it's not like you're, destroying this human being. You're just deciding, hey, you know what? We're just not on the same page here.
Right.
We're not part of the same tribe. We're not cut from the same cloth. We're not rowing in the same direction. And so, I've helped people manage those difficult conversations, but that's the decision you got to make. You got to rip the Band-Aid off early or pull the splinter, out of your hand, whatever the analogy is, because you've got to nip that stuff in the bud. Otherwise, like you said, that toxic culture, that one person, one bad apple will ruin the whole entire bunch. And so it's really about defining as an organization, what are your beliefs? What are your core values? And when you can articulate those well, and you can get the whole entire tribe to follow those, and then you see bad apple Gary over here, now the conversation is, hey, I'm not just picking on you, or so-and-so didn't complain about you, or all the he said, she says BS that leaders hate getting involved in, right? You don't want to be a personal counselor. Instead, now there's something that's bigger than all of us, and that's our belief system, right? And if you look at all the different tribes and cultures that have transcended time all across Earth for thousands of years, that's what it is. It's a belief system. So when you say we believe that we put our customers first, or we believe that we possess the mindset of a champion, or whatever your value is, and now the next time Gary does something that rubs you wrong, you need to be able to go back to one of those belief systems and say, it's that. That's what he's doing wrong, right? He's contradicting our belief system right here. That action that he just made to get that result was in direct conflict of one of our core values. And we just can't stand for that, right? Because we're only as strong as the weakest link, and our standards are what we tolerate. And so if we're allowing him to do that, even though it's in direct conflict of our core values, you got to go. And so sometimes you got to have some difficult conversations about that, but that's what it's all about, is setting the right expectations, knowing that you have a deep set of beliefs and values that everybody in the organization buys into. And that's how the business can grow and expand exponentially and give you the freedom as a leader to not have to micromanage and make every single decision. No,
that's a great place. And we're gonna hear a minute from our sponsor that makes Fortify possible.
Can't cut through the online chaos? This episode is powered by Ignite Visibility, the nation's expert in ROI-driven digital marketing. We help over 90 leading franchise brands in 2,500 locations outrank competitors and convert more customers. Ready to stand out and grow? Claim your free digital marketing audit at ignitevisibility.com. Ignite your growth.
So they make the show possible. All right, so let's go. What are some of the biggest transformations you've seen? I mean, so for me, the mistakes I've always made, and you know me because we've been in the forum together for years, and I was complaining about turnover and couldn't find good employees, and they weren't intrinsically motivated, and you were like, hey Ford, who's always at the scene of the crime? What's the one common denominator in this thing? Maybe you need to look in the mirror, right? And you gave me some tough love, and that really helped me realize that it starts, you got to clean up your own backyard before you worry about your neighborhood. But what do you do with those leaders that are delusional, that think it's the team's problem, it's not the leadership problem? And what happens a lot in the businesses I work with is sometimes their family's involved in their business, and so there's a lot of different dynamics involved. And so how do you navigate, or what advice would you give somebody to help start turning that ship into the right direction?
Yeah, very good question. Yeah, I've had the privilege of working with a lot of different business owners on this exact topic. And what's interesting is, like I said, culture exists already in your business, right? It's just whether or not you have an impact on it. And so some business leaders don't realize that their actions indirectly affect the culture. So you say it's important to show up on time, but you as the business leader never show up on time. Well, what does that communicate to the rest of the team? Is like whether they're digging into the hypocritical double standard or not. Despite all that, the standard is actually we don't show up on time. It's just get here whenever you get here. And so I think for a lot of business leaders, there comes that point of self-reflection of what is it that you're actually hoping to get out of this and hoping to achieve out of this business, right? Is this your vehicle to prosperity? What does that destination look like, right? And it is a journey. It's not about just getting to the destination, but if you can be excited about the journey every day because you know you're headed in the right direction to that journey, sometimes it just takes a really long, hard look in the mirror. I mean, just like I mentioned myself, one of the things we implemented a long time ago was the huddle. And that was just me reflecting on like, well, why isn't everybody getting it? Why doesn't everybody understand this? Right? It's all their fault. And then you go, oh, well, maybe if, a mass majority of all the people think this way and I'm the only other person that thinks that way, maybe they're actually the ones that are right and I'm the one that's wrong. So that just comes from a little bit of a mindset shift that a lot of business owners have to be willing and open to go through. But I think a good starting point for any business is to just really, go on a why quest. Why are you in this business? What is the reason why you wake up every single day? What are you passionate about? What are some of the great things that come from your business? What are the things that keep you up at night and create headaches? And then you start to articulate those and go through some self-think time or some group think time and really spell out what those things are. And then you create a unified vision. And then you've got to have that belief system or those core values to follow. And then once you commit to that, then it's incredibly important to make sure that you've got buy-in from all of the associates in the organization. So I've worked with small businesses, I've worked with large businesses where we've held giant masterminds and had everybody stand up and have an opportunity to present the values that are important to them and the things that they love about that organization and the things that they despise about that organization. And so just giving people a voice and letting them know that their opinion counts, their perspectives matter, their contributions are appreciated. That already is a great head start on any type of culture versus, most corporations that have the old, the office space type culture. Bill Lumberg comes to check on you to see if you turn in your TPS reports and they bring in the consultants to ask re-interview for your job. I mean, that's how most cultures are. I love that movie because it's literally just a joke of what not to be. And so I think by turning your organization on its head and saying, hey, what you do matters. I mean, one of the things that we do monthly at Rockerbox is a whole team mastermind. Right. We invite the whole entire team out. It's not required and it's not paid. We do, however, bribe them with free food. I will tell you that free food, no matter what income level you're at, is always a great way to bribe people for attendance. So we take them out for dinner once a month. And we basically go around the room and we say, what are we doing well? What do we need to improve on? And it's just a brainstorming session. And whether we walk away with that meeting with 10 new action items or 2 new action items, it's at least an opportunity where people feel understood and listened to, and it feels like they matter. And so these consistent rituals of communication, setting the right expectations, and as a leader, just making sure that you've got that vision and you've got those rules that you want to follow. And core values aren't just do these things all the right time. Sometimes they can be away values, right? These are the values we want to be away from, right? We don't want complaining. We don't want drama. We don't want noise in the office. So it's not just integrity and, customer first, but it's like you can identify things that you don't want in your organization as well. And so once you articulate all those things, it just becomes a guide for making all your decisions as you move along. But yeah, a lot of it's going to start with just a little bit of self-reflection, making sure that you've got the mindset to be open to, hearing some new ideas and hearing some proven concepts and proven models to move your business to the next level.
Well, now that's amazing, and I want everybody to know that the audio from this also becomes the Business Growth Show podcast. So if you're listening right now, it's Josh Cunningham. He's the founder and CEO of Rockerbox, but it's spelled ROKRBOX. So ROKRBOX. And also, yep, there he is. And show the book again and for everybody. So the title of the book you can obviously get, which is a dynamic title, Culture is the Key. Josh Cunningham, How to Unlock Massive Profits and Freedom in Your Business. So certainly go check it out. Shameless plug for Josh. I wouldn't have anybody on my show that I don't value. All right. So I know one of the other things that you're really good at is systems. Like you're really good at identifying the systems and the priorities and what has to be done first, second. And I think that that's also something in culture because, you're dealing with so many different personalities. You got the people who want to get it done. Like that's me. I'm like, let's get it done. Do we need a plan? No, let's get it done. And then you got the influential people that just want to socialize and have fun. That's great. They're great communicators, but maybe they're not following through. And then you got the steady people who just want to get along. They're usually highly educated, want to follow the systems, but if they're not given systems and they don't know what success looks like, well, then they flounder. And not because they're not a good employee, but because you didn't give them the structure to be successful. And then you got the get it right people who just want to get it right. So they're slow to make a decision because they're waiting to check all the boxes off and they have to see what the systems are. So to help everybody with their culture, I think it's really important to be able to have that outcome. I like to start with my consulting clients and high-end things I do. I say, okay, it's outcome first. What's our purpose? What's our actions? We're going to do a brain dump. Then we're going to chunk everything into certain categories. Then we're going to prioritize. Then we're going to pick which ones are the best. And then we're going to say, how much time is it going to take to get that done? Who can we leverage and hire? And then how do we schedule it? And then how do we execute? How do we monitor, and then how do we celebrate? So that's a lot to unpack. You guys can slow it down on the video replay. But you're really a systems guy. I mean, you really, what types of ideas do you have for people where they can start? Because a lot of organizations, they think they have systems. And the reason I'm bringing this question up is because personally, I used to think I had a plan. Well, I had an outcome. It wasn't a plan. So I would say, I have a plan. What's your plan for growing next year? Well, I have a plan. No, you have an idea. Yeah. You don't really have a plan. And that's when I had to really learn the differences. But you really do take it all the way to those through all those steps. So what should someone do listening to this, whether they're a private equity firm or and chief development officer, revenue generating, a franchisee? What should they do? Now, if they're a franchise, obviously follow your franchise systems for that. That's the first thing. Go back and use your tools that you've been given. But for business owners, how do they start to create those systems and implement them and hold people accountable?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of my mentors taught me a long time ago before I ever built my business was in order to test out new concepts and to build systems, you document, and you duplicate. So for me, when I started Rockerbox, I literally had this idea, I wonder if I could call leads all across the country with no local market knowledge and pick up the phone and identify needs and motivation and make that a hot lead.
So the first part was just for everybody here. So you're going to do it. So you got to make sure you test. Okay, that's good.
Yep. So I hopped on the phone, started making calls. And then when we started making calls, we just documented everything. That's step 2. Document everything. Because what you're going to find is things that work, but you're also going to find things that don't work. And that's just as critical, just as important. And so now you've done it, you've documented it, and then now you duplicate. Now you start hiring staff. Now you start saying, hey, come stand next to me. I'm going to do it, right? Then we're going to do it, and then you're going to do it. And then the ultimate level of learning is them to teach it back to you, right? So do, document, duplicate. I do, we do, you do. And then you teach me. And so those 2 simple keys of advice will help transform any business. Another thing that I like to recommend our clients do is what I call a customer lifecycle journey. Okay. And it basically walks people through the different steps of what it takes to get a complete stranger and turn them into a happy and satisfied customer. There's a lot of steps in there, right? You've got to attract the traffic, ad campaigns, digital, print, whatever it is. I mean, whatever your business is, there's ways that you're attracting people into your world. Then you've got to capture those leads, and you've got to nurture those leads, and you've got to convert them into a customer. And then after they're a customer, well, now you have to deliver and satisfy, right? What was the promise that you made to them? You got to execute that at a high level. And then after you delivered and satisfied, you don't just want them to go to the wayside. You want to make sure that they're buying with you more frequently and referring business back to you. So if you map out that customer journey and say, okay, well, what are all the ways we're attracting traffic? What are all the ways that we're converting leads? What are all the ways that we're nurturing these prospects? What does our sales process look like to actually get someone to sign on the line, which is dotted, right? The most important thing in life, sign on the line, which is dotted. And then now that they've signed on the line, well, what steps of the process are actually delivering and satisfying to these customers? And then after we've made them a 5-star review type customer, what are we doing to encourage them to do business with us more frequently and refer us their friends and family? And you map out all those steps of the journey, and then you figure out, like you had mentioned, who's responsible for those.
Right.
And now you have not just an org chart, but an accountability or a responsibility chart. And so you say, these are all the people and all these different steps. I mapped ours out. We have like 181 different things in our business. and they're all assigned to a specific person in our organization. So now things aren't falling through the cracks, and there's no ambiguous understanding of like, well, what are you doing, and what is this guy doing, and what is this guy doing? It's like everybody has a very articulated step in the process, and they may have many different things on their plate, but we at least know that when something falls through the cracks, there's one person in our organization we can go to and say, hey, this isn't working, can you fix it? Right? This is your responsibility, you're supposed to be accountable for this. And that's the last thing really, which you alluded to, which is how do you hold people accountable? It's the least favorite thing people like doing in
Right.
business. I remember learning early on, one of my managers, we were supposed to be doing something. I don't even know what it was. And I was like, well, why isn't this getting done? And her response was, well, I told them to do it. And I'm thinking, how many times have I been in Barnes & Noble walking around the business leadership book department? There's no book on there that says, just tell them to, right? Like, that doesn't work. You can't just tell people what to do and anticipate and expect that they're going to do it at a high level. So that's why leadership is leadership. There's an art of persuasion. There's an art of technically getting somebody to do something that they weren't going to do without you being involved. I mean, that's what leadership is if you break it down, right? I mean, a great leader will inspire and motivate people to do what they're more capable than what they would have done by themselves. And that creates synergy in your business. And so that accountability piece is one of the things that most people miss out on because they're like, I don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want to get people in trouble. And so again, it just comes back to setting expectations.
Yeah, what are you willing to tolerate?
Deliver on those promises. So we say at Rockerbox, when a brand new person comes to the door, we say, hey, we're on a 3-strike system here. You know, these are our policies. These are the expectations. If you fail to meet any of these, I mean, this is all about fairness of the whole team. But if you fail to meet one of these, we're going to document it. We're going to have a conversation about it so that we can make sure that we correct that issue. And I can tell you, we've hired over 425 inside sales assistants, and these are all part-time employees. They're students at Texas A&M, and I've fired 0 of them. Absolutely 0. And we've done that through basically our 3-strike system because we know habitually if someone's getting 1 strike and then they're getting 2 strike and then there's a little 90-day grace period, then they fall out of that and then they get another strike and another strike. Those types of people that you notice that are habitually like on the border of like maybe they're not a right fit for the organization. I've probably, out of the 425 employees we've had, I've maybe had 10 or 15 conversations with people where we sat down and we said, hey, these are the expectations. You're not meeting them. What's going on? How can I help? Right? It's my responsibility as a leader to get you to where you need to be. It's not my job to fire you, but it's my job to get you to where you need to be. And so how can I help? How can I serve? And then typically what we normally uncover is like, you can feel it. You can feel it in the air. They don't want to be there. Yeah. You don't want them there. You feel it out. And then you just kind of come to a conclusion of like, yeah, I mean, sounds like your semester is really tough. Or it sounds like this issue that you're having to drive home every weekend to go visit your parents because they're going through some stuff, right? Like whatever it is, we kind of come to an agreement of like, oh, okay, that's why your performance is slipping. Well, you know what? We have really high standards here, and it sounds like you've got a lot on your plate. Maybe this just isn't the right fit right now. And you know, why don't we just shake hands and part ways so you don't have to be terminated, and you don't have to, and you can always just still put this on your resume and we'll be a reference for you. And so I've probably had that conversation, like I said, maybe 10 or 15 times, because ultimately we have a really great hiring process to select the right people. And we have a really great culture that makes the work fun and meaningful and fruitful for everybody involved. But every once in a while, I mean, I think, what is that? Like maybe 2% of the people that we've hired were not a good fit. And so we had that difficult conversation with them. But everybody knows that's the standard, right? We show up on time. We do great work. We lift each other up. We live by our core values. And we do that because we make it a big deal every single day.
Well, I want to really thank you for taking the time today. Any closing thoughts you have for our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, the culture is something I'm incredibly passionate about. We all have things that come natural and easy to us. You know, some people are just natural born salespeople. Some people are natural born marketers. I know you're phenomenal in those categories. I've taken a lot of notes from you over the years. And culture is just something, I mean, I've got a sixth sense for it. You know, it's something that it's hard to articulate. It's hard to measure sometimes, but it's something that you can feel. And there's a lot of clients that I've worked with where I've showed up to their office and I've stepped inside and I have nothing but positive things to say about them because I can truly say I can feel the culture here. I can feel the way people treat each other. I can feel the awareness of the company goals and missions. And then I've also stepped in some businesses that are just feel rotten, you know, and you can feel it in the air. So just understand, again, from my perspective, culture is the key. It's the foundation that you build everything off of. And it's ultimately the thing that's going to help you achieve a lot of profits and freedom in your life.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in to Fortify Live, where we're all about accelerating your business growth. Until next time, keep innovating, keep growing, get Josh's book on Amazon, and keep fortifying your success. Thanks again, Josh.
Yeah, thanks, Ford. Appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to Fortify Live. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the Business Growth Show podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. We air weekly at 11 a.m. Central Time. So until next week, keep pushing the boundaries and never stop growing.